Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something pretty huge, a really big shift in how governments work globally. The new public management, or NPM.
Yeah, and this wasn't just shuffling deck chairs. It was more like governments deciding, okay, the old rule book isn't cutting it. Maybe we need something more like a business plan.
Right, and it seems it came from people being fed up, thinking government was too slow, too pricey, didn't listen.
Exactly. That's the core of it. Deep public dissatisfaction.
Mm.
So NPM was this attempt to bring in, market ideas to fix public services. It's a whole philosophy shift.
So our mission today for you listening is to figure out, was NPM like a universal cake recipe? A set of instructions you could just apply anywhere for better government.
Or is it something much trickier?
Yeah.
A fundamental change in thinking, a paradigm shift that really bumps up against local culture and politics.
And that question seems to hang on this idea mentioned early on by Donald Stokes. It wasn't about public versus private ownership, was it?
No, not fundamentally. He stressed it was about the purpose. Are you pursuing the public interest, or are you pursuing private gain? NPM's big promise was using those private sector tools to better serve that public interest.
Okay, let's dig into what NPM actually is and, where it sprouted from.
Well, what's really interesting, and the sources bear this out, is that it mostly grew, inductively.
Inductively, meaning?
Meaning managers looked around, saw practices that seemed to be working, often in the private sector, in search of excellence kind of ideas, and then tried to generalize those for government. It wasn't like someone wrote a big theory first.
Ah, okay. So grabbing good ideas and applying them, like reinventing government did later.
Sort of, yeah. But there's a big exception, which kind of proves the theory could come first.
Which is?
New Zealand. Their reforms were very deliberately built on a theoretical base. They used concepts like agency theory, public choice theory.
Hold on, let's pause there because those sound important. Agency theory in government.
Oh, yeah,
What's that about?
Okay, so agency theory looks at the relationship between a principal, say, the minister representing the public, and an agent, the civil servant doing the work.
Right.
It basically assumes the agent might follow their own interest, maybe wanting a bigger budget or just job security, unless the principal sets up clear contracts, performance targets, and, holds them strictly accountable.
Wow. Okay. That immediately puts it in very transactional, almost market-like terms.
It does. So if we step back from the New Zealand exception and look at the global picture, this inductive process, what core ingredients emerged? What defines this new paradigm according to, say, the OECD or Holmes and Shand?
Yeah, what's the list?
They boiled it down to about 7 key things. First, a relentless focus on results. Are we being efficient, effective? Is the service quality good?
Okay, results first. Makes sense.
Second, getting rid of those old rigid hierarchies. Decentralizing management, pushing decisions down closer to where the service actually happens.
Right, give the local managers room to maneuver. What about how services are delivered?
That's number 3. Flexibility. Exploring alternatives to the government doing everything itself. So, contracting out, privatization, using nonprofits.
Using market mechanisms.
Exactly. And number 4, creating competition. Not just with outside providers, but even inside the public sector. Making different departments or units compete.
Interesting. But if everything's decentralized and competing, who's steering the ship?
Good point. That's 5. Strengthening the strategic capacity at the center. The top levels focus on setting the overall direction, the big policy goals, not micromanaging.
Steering, not rowing.
You got it. And finally, 6 and 7 are about accountability and transparency. Using metrics, reporting on results, understanding the full costs, creating a performance culture.
Okay, that list sounds pretty coherent, actually, like a plan.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But this is where we hit the wall.
Ah, the Kate recipe problem.
Exactly. If it was a universal recipe, you'd expect similar results everywhere it was tried, but the sources are really clear that transferability just didn't happen. It's not plausible.
Even within the OECD countries, the relatively similar wealthy democracies.
Even there, the OECD's own public management unit, PUMA, basically concluded, look, there is no single best model. Reforms have to take national differences and local circumstances into account.
And those differences are huge, right? You can't just lump the UK administrative tradition together with, say, France's very legalistic, centralized system.
Absolutely not. Or think about the Nordic countries versus Greece. Very different political cultures, different ideas about the state's role.
And then if you try to take this recipe outside that OECD bubble,
it gets even tougher. Places like Mexico, Japan, Korea, or the former communist countries in Europe, Hungary, Poland, the Czech Republic,
Mm,
their main challenge was often still building basic democratic structures, not optimizing service delivery with market tools.
right. First things first. So if just copying best practices doesn't work, we need better tools, better concepts to understand why it breaks down across borders.
Precisely. And this brings us to the idea of a paradigm clash, drawing on Thomas Kuhn's work.
Paradigm clash, like worldviews colliding.
Sort of. When NPM proponents argue with traditional public administrators, they're often operating from fundamentally different assumptions about what good government even means. Their arguments become circular because they define success differently.
Okay, so we need to dissect those underlying assumptions, those conceptual battlegrounds. Where does the fight happen?
The sources point to three main arenas. First up, microeconomics.
Ah, the efficiency engine of NPM.
Pretty much. But it's crucial to distinguish between simple productive efficiency, doing the job cheaper, and allocative efficiency.
Allocative efficiency. That sounds like econ speak. Break that down for us.
Okay, allocative efficiency is rooted in this idea of Pareto optimality.
Pareto, right. The idea that a change is good if it makes at least one person better off and nobody worse off.
Exactly. And the implication is profound. Good or efficient gets defined purely by individual choices, by people maximizing their own preferences.
Whoa, okay, that's a huge clash with the traditional public service idea, isn't it? Where maybe everyone pays a bit more in taxes for a service that benefits the whole community, even if I don't use it personally.
Precisely. That idea of a shared public good that might override individual preference gets sidelined.
And this economic lens directly supports things like user fees.
Yes, because if people pay directly, the argument goes, their choices reflect the true cost. The traditional view, based more on equity, says essential public services should be funded from general taxes, so ability to pay isn't a barrier.
But does this theory hold up in reality? People aren't always rational economic actors, right? We have, what was it, bounded rationality.
Herbert Simon's idea, yeah. We make good enough decisions, not perfectly optimal ones, and the real-world application can get, well, problematic.
Like the New Zealand education example you mentioned.
Right. The analysis we looked at praised the efficiency gains from the reforms, but then it strongly pushed for more parental choice, more student demand to drive competition.
Okay, but you said there was a catch.
There was. A footnote buried in the analysis admitted this very policy could actually decrease the overall quality of education.
Wait, what? They pushed a policy knowing it might make education worse, just because it fit the market logic.
It seems that way. The logic of individual choice trumped stated national goals, like improving opportunities for Maori students or boosting maths and science skills. Efficiency was defined by parent preference, not educational outcomes for the nation.
That seems fundamentally flawed. It also brings up the question of value, doesn't it? If value is just the price something fetches in a market.
You run into problems. Think about the 1989 U.S. stock market crash. Did the actual productive capacity, the factories, the skills, the ideas of the U.S. economy really drop 20% in 3 days?
Oh, of course not. The price change, not the underlying worth.
Exactly. Market price and intrinsic public value can be very different things. So that's the economic battleground. What's next?
Law. If economics provides the fuel, maybe law provides the rule book or the brakes.
You can see it that way. Law is the traditional foundation. Public managers are supposed to follow the law, implement regulations derived from administrative law.
And NPM's focus on flexibility, on managers managing, that must create friction.
Big time. Think about fairness, due process. Complex rules often exist for a reason to ensure everyone's treated equitably, to uphold ethical principles. NPM can look like it wants to cut corners on those rules for the sake of speed or cost savings.
Which undermines basic citizen rights from a legal perspective.
Potentially, yes. And then there's accountability. If you decentralize power, who's ultimately responsible when something goes wrong? The minister, the agency head.
And the fear of things going wrong leads to more rules.
Often, yeah. Fear of mistakes, fear of litigation, pushes toward codifying everything in minute detail, which kind of defeats the whole NPM goal of flexibility.
It's a catch-22, and this must play out differently depending on the country's legal culture.
Hugely. Concepts like empowerment or customer orientation might just not fit in a political culture like, say, France, where there's a strong tradition of the state as the ultimate protector, operating through detailed legal codes. Their fortress ministries exist precisely to uphold rights through process.
So the law folks are naturally suspicious of NPM.
Well, it depends on their view of law. You have the red light school law as a check on government power, and the green light school law as the tool for achieving public goals.
And both might dislike NPM.
Yeah, but for different reasons. One sees it as undermining constraints, the other sees it as potentially ignoring the legal means needed to achieve the right public outcomes, focusing only on efficiency. Both worry it could sideline the general good as defined by law.
Okay, economics law. What's the third battleground?
Organizational theory, and specifically total quality management, TQM.
Ah, TQM, Edwards-Deming, quality circles, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And unlike NPM's somewhat haphazard inductive origins, TQM actually came with a pretty coherent conceptual foundation.
And it fits with NPM.
It complements it beautifully, actually. TQM provides a kind of how-to manual for achieving the results NPM wants. They share ideas like really identifying customer needs, measuring them, using teams across different functions.
Which fits with decentralization.
Right, and benchmarking, figuring out what level of service clients can reasonably expect.
And TQM has this idea about the cost of quality, doesn't it?
Yes, that's key. It provides a solid rationale for that promise of works better and costs less.
How does that work?
It systematically shows how investing in quality up front saves money down the line. For example, spending a bit more training staff to process applications correctly avoids huge costs later in appeals, corrections, maybe even lawsuits. A well-designed regulation costs less to administer for everyone.
So quality isn't a cost, it's an investment that pays off.
Exactly. Plus, TQM heavily emphasizes employee involvement, getting ideas from the frontline staff.
Which fits perfectly with NPM wanting to move away from top-down command and control.
It really does. And it taps into those non-financial motivators, pride in work, recognition, which are often really important for people working in the public sector.
Okay, so we have these three conceptual lenses. Economics, pushing efficiency, law pushing rules and rights, and organizational theory offering quality methods. How does this all play out in the real world of politics?
Well, let's look at that 1996 OECD Ministerial Symposium. You had ministers responsible for public management reforms all gathered together.
And what was the vibe? Were they all aboard the NPM train?
They generally agreed on the direction of reform things, reflecting NPM like, downsizing, decentralizing, focusing on customers, contracting out.
But I sense a but coming.
A big but. They were not willing to just throw out the state's traditional roles, being the protector of the general interest, maintaining law and order, ensuring fairness and equity. They liked the tools, but weren't buying the whole philosophical package, perhaps.
They wanted the efficiency without sacrificing the core public service mission.
Pretty much. And the chair of that meeting highlighted some key political tensions, real dilemmas that ministers face constantly when trying to implement these reforms.
Dilemmas, like what?
Okay, first, decentralization versus accountability.
Yeah.
You want to empower local managers, let them take risks. But the moment something goes wrong, the pressure for accountability comes right back to the center, to the minister, to the taxpayer.
Yeah, heads will roll centrally, even if the decision was local.
Then there's flexibility versus political risk. Managers need flexibility to innovate, to experiment, but politically, governments hate making mistakes, especially embarrassing ones that end up in the headlines. So that chills experimentation.
Play it safe, don't rock the boat.
Exactly. And maybe the toughest one, ethically. Customer service versus equity.
How so?
Well, how do you design services around the customer who can demand things, choose options, without forgetting about the people who aren't powerful customers? The disadvantaged, the vulnerable, those who can't easily voice their needs or preferences in a market-like system.
Right. Government isn't just a business serving paying customers. It has a duty to everyone, especially those who need help the most.
And that dilemma cuts right to the heart of it. It shows why NPM isn't just some neutral management toolkit. It's deeply political, forcing trade-offs between efficiency and these core public values.
So stepping back, looking at everything we've discussed, the clear takeaway is
NPM is definitely not a simple cake recipe. You can't just import it wholesale and expect it to work.
it's this complex, often contested shift in thinking that runs smack into long-held national values, legal traditions, economic assumptions, ways of organizing.
All of that. And those obstacles are still very real today. You still see resistance to certain reforms in Japan, challenges building the necessary civil service structures in places like Mexico, ongoing struggles in post-communist states. The conceptual clashes mean the debate just keeps going, often in circles, like Kuhn predicted.
So the leaders, the politicians, they seem to agree broadly that they want results, they want flexibility, they want better customer service.
Yes, the goals sound good.
But here's the final thought for you listening. When those NPM principles, often drawn from market thinking, collide head-on with the legal and ethical ideas of the general good, the very reason public service exists, how do we actually know if we're succeeding?
What does success even mean then? It forces us to think beyond just efficiency numbers. You need to understand the law, the culture, the politics that define what good government means in that specific place for those specific people.
That struggle seems like it's going to be with us for a long time.
It is the ongoing challenge of public service, I think.
A perfect place to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.